My name is Ethan Cole, and I'm the president of the Product Managers Association Los Angeles, and we're really excited to have you with us tonight. We have an excellent panel talking about pivots being done by LA companies as they relate to our current crises and our current situations. It's similar theme to our product summit, and hopefully many of you were able to join us there and are coming back to get a little bit more in depth with some of our local product leaders. Really excited about this one. Before we get into tonight's program, just want to share a little bit of background about who we are. What is PMA? PMA, we are the Product Managers Association Los Angeles. We focus on a few things. We're looking to build better product people and have a high quality product community here in Los Angeles. So there's a few things that we like to do. We like to provide networking and learning opportunities so that we can hone our skills. We provide regular meetups. So pre-COVID, we would go to different companies throughout Los Angeles and have them share their story and a little bit of an educational opportunity and for us to, learn their space and learn a bit more about their product team and what they put out there. We've since pivoted, so bear with us. We're all product managers here, and we're all trying to experiment and see what makes the best fit. So I'll talk to you a little bit later about some of the changes we're going to be making in 2021 to that point. The other thing we do is we put in the LA Product Summit. So thank you all who joined us a few weeks ago. We had our biggest event. We had a terrific lineup of speakers who talked to us about leading product in times of crises. If you missed it and you're looking for the recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel or go to PMA.LA, the website, and we'll have some links to them. Again, we're over 2,000 of LA's best and brightest product managers, and we try to find ways to connect with one another through educational and networking opportunities. To that point, excited to set up our next event. It's Tuesday, November 10th. Our moderator tonight will actually be our interviewer on November 10th. Drew Falkman will be interviewing Ted Olson, a CEO of Pendo, who has a new book about product-led organizations. Highly recommend sticking around for that. Details can be found at pma.la/Pendo. This will be a midday event. Again, something we're trying to experiment with. Do we keep after work events or try to make things midday? So if you have opinions either way, please let us know. Another thing we're doing this year is our mentorship program. This is really exciting. So this is an opportunity to give back and to help folks from underrepresented groups. So right now we're teaming up with undergrads and MBA students, mostly at UCLA now, but we're looking to expand in 2021. And there's a lot of ways that you can give back. If you want to give a little bit of time, you can do resume reviews or mock interviews. And if you're interested in having a more in-depth relationship, we offer a one-on-one mentorship track as well. We're popping a link into the chat room right now. So if you're interested, please look us up. We're looking for mentees and mentors. So if you know a student who might be interested in product management, encourage them to sign up. And if you or someone might be interested in being a mentor, please take a look. Now here's another exciting thing we have coming down the pipeline. One of the things we miss the most about having these events in person are the networking opportunities and the opportunities just to speak with someone else in product, even those who are not from your team or even outside of your network. So we're trying to do something new. So bear with us and hopefully you'll enjoy it. We're calling it the PMA Collective. Basically, it's going to be a midday meetup that meets bi-weekly over the course of 3 months. You're going to be prompted to discuss certain different topics, to learn new tips and tricks of the trade. And it's really just an opportunity for you to fulfill that the void of meeting and networking with folks in person. So signups will be until December 15th. We're starting them now. There's a link now that we're putting into the chat room. It's an experiment. We're all product people. So let us know either way. If you think this sounds great, please sign up. If you don't, feel free to hit me up hit me up on LinkedIn or ecole@pma.la, or join our Slack channel and let us know there. But I'm really excited for new opportunities in the new year for us to come together, even though we're all very much apart right now. And without further ado, I'm excited to introduce Drew, who's going to kick off the COVID pivots and lessons learned. If you don't know him, he's just a terrific all-around person, and I will have some notes to make sure I do him justice for all his accolades. So Drew Falkman is an experienced product leader in digital innovation and transformation. He's won the Best Product Consultant Award in 2019 from the Product Group. He currently leads the strategy and UX practices at Modus Create, which is it's a digital transformation company that focuses on design thinking, lean innovation, and agile development. Drew has been doing product for over 20 years. Like I said, he's a great all-around person, and we're really excited for him to be our moderator and to speak to our terrific panel of product leaders that we have here tonight. So Drew, thank you so much for helping organize tonight, and I'm going to kick it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ethan. I'll make it quick. I want to get to the panelists because I think I've had the fortune to meet with all of them and sort of talk through their situations. And, you know, for everyone here, it's been an absolutely crazy year for those of us that still have jobs, and even crazier for those of us that lost them. So I just want to get onto them. So look, COVID has changed everything. And for me, my wife's an ER physician. And so when everything started happening in February, there was a big panic. And my wife was really panicking because there was no good way to share real-time information on treatment, and nobody knew about this virus. They were worried about PPE. There was a lot of things happening with these frontline doctors. And so she actually ended up talking to a person and yada, yada. And the gist is she got quoted in New York Times, and through a tweet, ended up getting this amazing outpouring from all these tech companies that wanted to help, and ended up putting covid.slack.com together through the VP engineering at Slack, and also through ID.me offered a login authentication process that only doctors could sign in. And that really sort of set the pace for me, like, oh my God, this is going to change everything. And the really nimble companies are going to make all kinds of crazy new advancements. Other companies are going to go by the wayside, and the rest of us are going to just scramble to sort of figure out what to do. So it's really interesting to hear all the stories of what's happening. And tonight we have three people that are going to talk about it. We have Chris Boussard, who's the VP of Product and Pricing and Distribution at Ticketmaster. Obviously, we know who Ticketmaster is. And so they've had a lot of tough decisions to make. They're a very big company, totally based on in-person events. And then we have Issa Johnson, who's the Director of Product at Gold Star. And they are also an events company. And they've been able to launch a new product called Stellar, which she can talk about. And then we'll have Randy Eichenbaum, who is the VP of Product at Tradesy, which is sort of a buyer-seller marketplace, but it works like an e-commerce site. And so they've had a lot of changes because the whole landscape has shifted in that. So it's going to be really interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and then hand it off to Chris Boussard from Ticketmaster, and he can tell you a little bit about their experiences.
Hello, everyone. Let's see if I can get this. All right. Is everyone seeing my screen? Yeah? Cool. Thank you.
Affirmative.
Alrighty. Well, okay, cool. Well, as Drew said, thank you, Drew. My name is Chris Boussard from Ticketmaster. As you can imagine, Ticketmaster was hit hard by the pandemic, probably up there with the cruise industry. So, you know, we ticket large events, and, you know, all of those were quickly banned worldwide. So I want to tell you about how we responded to the crisis and how we pivoted and plan for the return to live events at scale. A little bit of background, Ticketmaster is the largest ticketing company in the world. We have huge scale. We ticket more than, we provide more than 500 million tickets a year, ticketing more than 40,000 events annually. And Q1 was shaping up to be one of the strongest years yet. There was a lot of great artists looking to tour, BTS, Billie Eilish. A couple of the ones that I was looking forward to was the Lumineers and New Order at the Hollywood Bowl. But then March happened, and all of a sudden, events started getting canceled, rescheduled, postponed. And so the machine that was built to go forward didn't just stop, it started going in reverse. So, our first step was to respond to the immediate crisis. Fortunately, we're a company focused on showtime, so we were able to really rise to the challenge. As you can imagine, our call center, it was inundated with calls, everybody trying to figure out what the status of their event was, what their options were on their tickets. So our development teams and product teams set the work that they were doing aside and spun up the industry's most comprehensive information portal so that the fans could self-service that information and really provided great fan customer service while taking the load off of our call center. In conjunction with that, our operations team was having to update the event status as the artists, sports teams, and venues were deciding what to do as they were changing the status. So again, another development team jumped in to streamline that pretty manual operation because we've never had to do it in bulk at the scale that we were doing before. We also were able to take advantage and dive into a couple of quick wins by ticketing drive-in concerts and also ticketing streaming events with our parent company, Live Nation. Of course, all of this was happening while everyone was working remote. We actually have a pretty good remote culture, certainly for the product and development team, but operations, call center, customer support, that was all on premise, and everyone was now working from home. One of the things that I think that we did well that I wanted to call out during this time is that we protected unaffected teams. So the company's big enough that we know how to meet multiple deadlines at once. So teams that were needed absolutely chipped in, but we protected the teams that were not so that they could stay focused on their current goals. Once the immediate crisis kind of subsided a little bit, we could take just a little bit of breath. We had to decide how to move forward. And there was a lot of conjecture across the company, a lot of great ideas on what we should be doing to help fans to return to live events during COVID, post-COVID, and a lot of passion to move fast. Like we've got to jump into this. But we really risked investing in the wrong thing. So instead, we started with research to understand the current mindset of fans. Where did they stand on returning to live events and what would help or hinder that? So we did an email survey of more than 8,000 ticket buying fans in multiple segments. And what we found was that a majority of the fans are willing to return to live events. They're looking forward to it. Cleaning and sanitation at the venue is key, but more invasive measures like wearing a mask could actually hinder or dissuade early returners because they were a lot less popular. So taking that data, we formed that into takeaways to form our roadmap. So, which was start small and test regionally, really focus on communication and fan education about the cleaning measures, but wait on intrusive and expensive measures. For example, one of the things we were talking about is, should we incorporate a health screening app before you can get to your digital ticket? But the data didn't really show that would have been productive, and it would have been expensive and time consuming. So we decided to deprioritize that and do the messaging, social distance seating, and timed entry. Once we had the data from the research, it was time to come up with a new plan. So in addition to the research, of course, we had to recalibrate our company goals. We do an OKR, an annual OKR with quarterly review process. And we knew that this year there was no way that we were going to grow our revenue or adoption targets, by 10% or whatever we had it set out. So at the executive level, they reset what our targets were in terms of the numbers that we were trying to hit. Then we were working on our roadmaps. We have several teams that we all manage our own roadmaps, but get communicated out and vetted across the company, again, on an annual and quarterly basis. So we use that same process, we just did it ad hoc. So each team evaluated their own roadmaps and made proposals on what should remain, what should be added, and what should be cut, and if they were resourced to complete those goals. Then we compiled all of that into a master list. It was quite a list. It was about 450 projects that we were able to weight differently based on the importance, the difficulty, and the long-term value to come up with a stacked rank list that our executive leadership team and we had a COVID task force weigh in and coordinate to come up with the company priorities. What that looked like, one good thing is that the company has been innovating on a new digital ticketing platform for the past few years. So that puts us in a really good position for what we needed to do for state and venues for this time of the pandemic and post-pandemic. So some features we already had, others were brand new, like they came out of the research, social distance, seating, timed entry, and others were in the works, but we had to, accelerate, add new features, finish them off a little bit. So these were the projects that floated to the top, and then, tons of other projects, some of them near and dear to my heart, did have to get deprioritized or reduced funding, which means that they'll take a little bit longer. But we think that this is the best course of action, again, to service live events during the pandemic. But there's great value once we go live. We think that all of these features will be useful, and we are not investing in any throwaway work. So, I'm proud of how Ticketmaster responded to the crisis and how they set a new path forward. So I think there's some great takeaways should anyone find themselves in a similar situation. So, first, act quickly and don't cause any chaos. Great teams will jump in and respond to a crisis, but no one likes to be whipped from one thing to another without meaning or goal. If you can afford the time, do your research to ensure you're investing in the right thing. Be honest when you reprioritize. You may have to be brutal and give up something important, but not everything can be number one. Be transparent and communicate with your employees, and even if you don't have all of the answers, let them know what's going on and what process you're going through, and what they can expect. We did frequent town halls, Q&A forums, with Slack channels, and lots of emails to ensure that everyone understood the company's plan and how they fit into it. Of course, we need to be sensitive to the new working conditions of the employees. This time around, all of a sudden, everybody was working from home, but in the future, it could just be people working really long hours in the office. And last but not least, make sure you have enough cash to survive. It's hard to come back from a crisis if you don't have enough money to make it to the other side. So that's one thing that Ticketmaster and Live Nation has had to do. As a $15 billion global company, we are not going to make that money without live events. So there's a lot of cost-cutting measures that they have done, from renegotiating rent, reducing benefits. We have gone through some furloughs, But it's important. If you don't have the cash to survive, you're not going to come back. So make sure you keep an eye on your bank account. So thank you. 2020 has been quite a year for all of us, but I think and I hope we'll all come out the other side much stronger for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. That was really interesting. There's a lot of good questions that people have been posting. I'm going to ask just a quick one, and I think some of these we can loop back to and get the answer from everybody. But a lot of the questions were around the user research that you did and the data gathering early on. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of the instincts to do that? How quickly did it go? Did you use an outside firm? What was the process for that?
One thing that again, I'm proud of Ticketmaster. We have a really robust in-house research team that, complements, but is different than our design, our UX design team. But, so we have both quantitative and qualitative research experts that both focus on our client needs and the B2B and help us understand workflows and user journeys for, artists and promoters and venues. And then we have a whole another team that focuses on the fan and what their experience is. We're trying to, in a lot of ways, reinvent ticketing with digital ticketing. What are the, what does that take? What's important? We also look at, of course, all of our website and tracking metrics. We do panels, we do surveys, we do benchmarks. So we already had that in place, and that was part of our DNA. And so we were able to kick that into gear almost immediately.
And the main ones that you base your decision on, was it a different quantitative and qualitative? Were there, was it a survey? What was sort of the methodology for, figuring out the what do we do kind of stuff?
It is mostly quantitative. So we did a benchmark survey and we looked at how things changed over time. We asked a lot of questions on when they thought that they would come back. Kind of extended as time went on. We were able to find 3 different user segments from early returners, mid returners, and late returners, and what was important to each of those. So we found some of the common themes: cleanliness, hand sanitation, contactless entry. Everybody was fine with that. The early returners, as you can imagine, were a bit more cavalier, and they were ready to come back. And they're like, sure, if you want to clean the venues and do anything that doesn't affect me, more power to you, but I want to get in. Don't put the onus on me. So they're like, if you make me wear a mask, I may not come back. But, the segments where mask wearing was really important in those types of measures that required some personal responsibility and participation, those were most important to late returners, which tended to be more city dwellers, higher income, and a little bit older.
Interesting.
From that, we felt that clubs and sports teams would come back sooner. It doesn't bode as well for theater that has that older demographic.
Awesome, great, thanks, Chris. That was really interesting.
Yep.
So I'll segue now. We'll stay with the event's theme, and we will go to Issa Johnson with Gold Star. She's the director of product there, and she can talk about their Stellar initiative and how they managed it. Issa, take it away.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, thanks, Drew, for the intro. I'm Issa Johnson, and Director of Product for Gold Star. And 2020 has been crazy, so I wanted to share what we've been busy with since mid-March. Mid-March, I think we all remember. Well, I definitely remember we're in the live entertainment industry, which, as Chris has said, has been hit hard with this pandemic. So mid-March, that was when Broadway closed all the shows. NBA postponed their season, and it was, we looked at our sales and it just like falling off a cliff. So, you know, it was chaotic and super uncertain. And so we kind of just took things week by week. So these are some of the things that we've been busy with. By late March, we wanted to start helping our event organizers to, you know, get help. So we started marketing donations for them. A lot of our event organizers are smaller organizers, theater folks, and so they were, you know, definitely impacted, smaller venues. And also a lot of our audience are live entertainment fans and theater folks. And so we did the donations. We also started, by the beginning of April, we updated our site and our apps so that it could accommodate online events. And then we did something similar that, you know, Chris and his team did. We did our research. We wanted to find out, we wanted to gauge our consumers' sentiment and share this information with our partners and also with the live entertainment industry. So we've been doing surveys since May. So just like through SurveyMonkey, we just reached out to our audience. And then we also wanted to learn from experts. So around the same time, we started hosting expert chats on a regular basis. So every other week, we started talking to experts from public health, virology, event safety, event organizers, and we would record these sessions, share it with our audience and the industry. And then we also knew that you know, we kind of had to be thinking like a startup, right? What are the opportunities that this situation has presented? And we started pursuing what we think is a big opportunity in the live business. And that's the stellar streaming product that we started building in early May. So kind of backing up a little bit on some of the things we did, just a little bit of background on that survey. We, I mentioned, started doing that in May. We conducted and shared it twice monthly. We surveyed people from all ages, under 25 to over 65, across major metropolitan areas. And we made sure that who we're surveying are frequent event goers. So our most recent survey in October, 70% of the respondents said that they usually go to live events about once to twice a month, and 19% of them said they go out weekly or more. So we felt like this was a large sample, large enough so that it's representative of a valid segment of the event going public. So that was about, you know, close to 3,000 respondents. And here's kind of the results. So this is the results in May. So after we aggregated, you know, the data, we came up with a return readiness score, which just kind of describes the willingness of our audience to go to live events where they are. And so you could see in early May, the return readiness score is 40. And if you compare that to the scale on the left, that's, you know, 50 is maybe, that's, you know, less than maybe, which is understandable during that time. But our latest survey, early October, the score didn't change much. Actually, back during the summer, that score increased. People were more comfortable or started feeling better about going out, but that's gone down again. And so we're at 42. But one data that I'm not showing here is the enthusiasm and the readiness for people to go out. And that's, you know, in the 90s. Obviously, people can't wait to go out. And so this is the kind of an opportunity that we started pursuing. we kind of knew that we needed to take things online. Kind of started as a stopgap, but it could be supercharged in terms of online streaming events. So we built Stellar. In our mind, it's a total show management system for online events, and we specifically built it for live entertainment entertainment professionals so that they could create a high quality interactive show and get paid for it. So some of the numbers that we saw on that is, back in October 17, Geffen Playhouse produced this streaming show, and they were able to sell over 7,000 tickets. So it's a great opportunity because now they're able to reach more audience. They were able to, a new way to reach audience, and it's, presenting the experience in a different way. And they were able to sell, 14 nights worth of tickets in one night because they were also limited, with an in-person event with the capacity of the venue. So we feel like definitely our passion is still on the in-person events, but we think that online events could be, an enhancement, an extension of when in-person events start coming back live. Thank you.
Awesome. That's great. It's interesting to hear from both of you that the things that you ended up changing were things that were already underway. And I'm wondering how, what priority were they before? What was Stellar in the backlog before? Was it just kind of an idea that no one had really done anything with, or was it something that, did you have a team allocated to it? Where were you on that beforehand?
Yeah, it was not even on the roadmap. So our roadmap we just had to kind of start from scratch. We would have never even pursued something like Stellar, on a streaming platform. We wouldn't have even thought of that a year ago. So it was, just kind of.
And what was the process of coming up with that idea? Once you said in May you came up with it. So what was the brainstorm, or was this someone's pet thing, or how did that come about?
So in early April, we started accommodating online events because we knew, so our organizers were looking for stopgap solutions. Consumers were looking for more content. And so we knew, okay, it had to be online. But how could we monetize that, right? How could we create, because you have to create a good experience, provide good content, compelling show for it to be, monetized. And so we knew we had to take it further than, the online events that we were listing on our site. And so through our research, we knew that our audience weren't ready to go out. And so we just kind of started iterating fast, with that startup mentality, started iterating, getting it out there, doing beta testing, getting some of our event organizers involved as early adopters, testing it out with folks at Gold Star. And we started feeling like this is, a different experience. And we could make it engaging, and it is engaging, and it's, could be more of a stopgap in the future.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. And we'll come back. I have a lot of questions for everyone that'll be interesting to hear. There's some good stuff. All right, now we will completely shift gears from events, and we will talk about commerce and marketplaces, and what happened with Tradesy. So Randy Eichenbaum, I introduced her earlier. She's the VP of product at Tradesy. So take it away, Randy.
Hey guys, excited to be here. I was just realizing I don't think I've been amongst this many product people since PMLA's event a year ago. So this is really cool. Share. Everyone can see my screen? Cool. So I know tonight's panel is called Pivots and Lessons Learned. And while at Tradesy, we certainly had to do some pivoting. We actually, a lot of what the things that we did that enabled us to come out the other side of the height of the pandemic really were accelerations of initiatives that were already in the works. And what COVID-19 forced us to do as a company is really apply a level of deep focus on the most important initiatives that were going to make us survive as a business. I know Drew already mentioned this, but just for context, Tradesy is a peer-to-peer marketplace. We're focused on the women's luxury category. And our mantra throughout COVID was to weather the storm and come out stronger. We knew that if we could survive this pandemic, we ultimately were going to be a better and healthier business in the long run. So how did the pandemic impact us? The short of it is it impacted every part of the business imaginable. Both our demand and supply side of our business decreased dramatically. And so at the peak of the crisis, we were down in GMV by about 40% year over year. We expected some of that. It is totally understandable that someone is less apt to buy a $1,000 handbag at the height of a pandemic. What we didn't anticipate and what we didn't expect is to see our supply numbers drop as well. What we thought is, hey, people are going to be home more. They're going to want to earn some extra cash. And we actually expected our listing volume to go up. And that's not what we saw at all. And in talking to our customers, what we heard was, yeah, I'm home, but I'm also trying to not only work from home, but homeschool my children and just kind of make it from day to day. I don't have time to be listing on the platform, or due to shelter in place mandates, people just didn't have their supply handy to list. We also saw our cancellations increase dramatically. This was also not something that we expected. And we sort of referred to this as the canary in the coal mine, the thing that really could take us down unless we got it under control. And we'll talk a little bit more about kind of why that happened and what we did about it. And then lastly, as a courtesy to our customers, we used to, when we were in our office in Santa Monica, actually used to accept returns from our buyers, take on that inventory and resell it to them on the seller's behalf. We had to get out of our office and we could no longer have people working physically in close quarters handling inventory. And so once shelter in place mandates were put into practice, that was something that we had to change dramatically and immediately. Less people listing inventory on our platform, less people buying it. Of those transactions that were actually happening, much less were being fulfilled, and a whole part of our business that we needed to completely overhaul. So we had our work cut out for us. So to highlight some of the key things that we did, starting with the drop in demand and supply. Because stores were now closed, we identified a pretty big opportunity in that brands and traditional retailers now had excess inventory on their hands, and that we can be the platform and the destination for that inventory to go. This was something that was already happening. We had integrated with an inventory management system late last year, And we are starting to sell inventory in certain categories from these more traditional retailers. But we were limited in what we could sell because traditional retailers have the concept of a variant, right? They may have a top or a shoe that comes in multiple sizes or colors. We are a marketplace that exists solely around the notion of individual listings. And so what we built, which these screens that you see on the right, is what we refer to internally as our partner product page, which, just from a consumer standpoint is fairly simplistic. It's what you would expect to see on Nordstrom.com, but was a really huge, complex undertaking in that it forced us to kind of overhaul our entire data structure in order to introduce this new concept. Again, as mentioned, this was something that was already in the works, but once the pandemic hit, just made this initiative in particular that much more of a priority and accelerated it and moved it to the top of the backlog and to our prioritization roadmap, in which we were able to deprioritize other things and put more resources on this initiative. We've seen a lot of success in now being able to support the notion of a variant and open up the doors to bring on supply that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And so now having this capability, we brought in around 60 million in new inventory in Q3. And we're able to prove out that now having this inventory available increased conversion fairly dramatically. Cancellations. So this was a scary one, and one we were kind of scratching our heads and had some ideas of why this was happening, but because none of us had been through a global pandemic before, weren't quite sure. And talked to our customers to try to understand why they were canceling their orders. And you can see the kind of most common and most popular reasons were deficiencies in shipping. So postal services were delayed, and so customers were often waiting for extended periods of time for their shipping kits, and then either the buyer or the seller would get frustrated and end up canceling their order, or customers understandably just didn't want to go to the post office, either for packaging materials and to actually ship out. And so we created a sort of micro operation within our customer service team with the sole purpose of being shipment enablers. And it was their sole focus and job, once a transaction did happen, to do everything in their power to get their seller to fulfill that order, whether that meant helping them get package materials or setting them up with a pickup service, etc. We have been able to reduce our cancellation rate fairly significantly from that 50% increase at the height of the crisis, but we're still not there yet, to be honest. And it is still a problem that we're continuing to chip away at until we're down to that pre-crisis average. And then finally, within 1 week, so it was the week that LA put their shelter in place mandates into place, we completely overhauled our return policy entirely, going to a full-on return to seller return policy. So a buyer will still go through us to return their item, and then that item will go back to the seller. And that processing and inspection of an item is being done almost entirely virtually in partnership with a 3PL that we have down in San Diego. And so you can see this chart on the right. It's a little bit outdated at this point, but at the beginning of April, we were sitting on over $1 million worth of inventory from returns that we had taken on. And we have been able to deplete that, and this is current to the end of June, so it was a little bit outdated, but by about 80%, which just makes the profile of our business look that much better. We recognize not a perfect user experience as a seller that goes through the trouble of listing their item and then the excitement of it selling and now it coming back to me, that's disappointing. And again, we're going to continue to massage that policy and make it better for all parties involved as we go into next year. And then things that I wouldn't have anticipated that were positive things that came out of the crisis for the company. Tradesy had been a remote friendly organization, but we were by no means fully remote. And we transitioned very, very quickly into being a fully remote company, and our efficiency improved, calculated by story points, by 50%. And I think the much more squishy metric to quantify, but just as important, which is I feel closer to my teammates than I have ever before, and the bonds that I have been able to form with not only individuals within the product organization, but across departments in the organization has been really, really cool and powerful. I think in that the pandemic really focused or forced us to focus on what mattered. And the first example that I showed with our partner product page, and we were able to deprioritize those less important things. We built products the right way. And so partner product page, which was a huge initiative, quarter-long initiative, rather than coming out of an initiative like that with a lot of tech debt, we actually cleaned up a lot of tech debt along the way and improved user experience from kind of various touch points throughout the user journey in part of that process. And then finally, the COVID made us focus on problems that were amplified as a result of the crisis, but have always been problems. Cancellations have always been a problem. On average, 15% of our purchases get canceled every month. That sucks. And I am glad that we're really taking the time to focus on that issue and make that a better experience for our customers. So thank you, and shameless plug, but we are really fortunate to be growing our team, and I am hiring for a product manager. So if you know great people or are looking for a new gig, please reach out to me. Thanks.
There's no shame in that. I think there's a lot of people looking for work now, so that's great. Awesome. You know, what's interesting to me about that story, there's two things. One is you had a mantra, which is like amazing. I want to know who came up with that. And then the other thing is that you had this like startup, like monolithic focus on GMV, which for those who don't know, that's gross merchandise value. All right. And it's like a peer-to-peer tracking metric. So it's interesting that you shifted to that, to actually becoming more sort of holistic in your approach and becoming stronger. So why do you think that happened? And first, the mantra, how did that come about?
I think our CEO, Tracy D'Annunzio, who's a really great leader, I think she came up with that. It was introduced in a company all hands slide. So I don't know if an exec on her team maybe contributed to that, but I think she came up with that. In terms of us having a more holistic approach on the company, I think, you know, we recognized one on the supply side of our business, which really we hadn't given that much focus to as much as we should have prior to the crisis. We were very sort of buyer and shopping experience focused. You know, we identified one, this huge opportunity to take on excess inventory, and two, I just knew that in order to be a healthy business in the long run, we needed to have the best supply in the category, and that's ultimately going to be the thing to drive demand.
Awesome, that's interesting. So there's a question in here, and feel free to tap out if you want to, but I think it's very interesting. Is there anything you regret doing in the process of this, of the changes you made? I mean, these are great stories, and I think that the overall picture is that things ended up pretty well, but were there any starts and stops you had? Do you feel like you waited too long because events were getting postponed and getting sucked into the postponed thing, not recognizing they were going to start canceling, or anything else you'd like to share? Chris, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, we acknowledged early on that it was a highly dynamic situation. We don't ticket Coachella, but I like to use that as a benchmark, because in March it got rescheduled to October. In July it got rescheduled to April, and by October it got rescheduled to October of 2021. So, like I said, the first thing we had to do was respond to the crisis, and then live events weren't happening. We were able to take stock and figure out what we needed to do. Most of our product development is playing the long game. And a lot of our big bets that we are investing in still hold true. We know that live events will come back, and we want to be the strongest player that we can when that comes back. So I think that we did a good job of, don't have a knee-jerk reaction. We did change some of our priorities, but we didn't move people around till we knew where we wanted to deploy them more effectively. So I don't think that we had many false starts in that regards. The period, so I said that you should communicate out, even if you don't have all the answers. So I think Ticketmaster was good about that. But as a product manager, we like to plan and execute. So knowing that there was an upcoming change, right, that it was being evaluated, people were submitting their proposed changes. We knew what the company was looking for and social distance seating, stuff like that. So we really had to, be comfortable and manage through ambiguity. One of the things that I did in that regard is, well, let's not have too many irons in the fire at once. Then let's try and finish off work and do it, sequentially, so that if we need to pivot, then we'll have tied up the previous work. But kind of the hardest thing was the period where we were replanning. I maybe have painted that happening faster than it actually did.
Great, thanks. I appreciate the honesty. Isa, can you think of anything?
Yeah, in terms of things I feel we probably could have done better. I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like the team collaborated more, kind of like what Randy was saying. We got closer because we kind of felt like, okay, we all have to come out of this better. And so we collaborated more. I feel like we started doing things more kind of by the book, like, hey, let's do our research. Let's kind of, check out, how our audience, how they're feeling, because we want to use those learnings to kind of, how often do we reach out to them? It's kind of like a sensitive time right now. Like, they probably don't want to see any messaging about live events. Like, how could we use those learnings to pivot in a very empathetic way, right? So that we're not turning people off. And we use that for, when we're sending surveys. Like, we were very careful about, let's not send surveys in that area yet. They might not be ready to respond. And, we definitely, in terms of like doing things the right way, really prioritized, really looked at the roadmap, like on top of like operations, like we had to do the returns, we had to do the refunds and all that stuff that has to like flow well and respond to our customers. But like, let's really look at the roadmap and pursue kind of like the biggest opportunities. And that was like the online online event. And we wanted to really kind of help out our event organizers. As I mentioned, they're, smaller venues. Some of them were kind of just like waiting for the PPP, or waiting for a vaccine, or waiting for the governor to say, okay, we're going to open up. And so we're kind of sending that message that you kind of have to look at perhaps a different business model, or not wait, grab a hold of this opportunity and figure out how to produce a good show online that you could, extend after in-person event comes back.
Awesome. Randy, you guys have any mistakes that you can think of? You guys didn't know you were going to do a live retro in front of a bunch of people, huh?
Well, I was just
Surprise.
on the micro level, like hundreds of mistakes every day. On the macro level, I think we would reach out and talk to our customers once we had hit a wall and really just like couldn't make sense of the data and figure out what was happening in a certain area of the business. And I wish we would have been a little bit more proactive in talking to our customers, prior to we hit that point, and really just, I think I hear what Issa is saying, which is, you felt a little bit like, can I reach out to a customer right now to talk to them about luxury apparel? I don't know, but I do wish we would have been a little bit more proactive in talking to our customers.
Awesome. So we are at the originally scheduled time. Are you guys open to taking another question or two? Yeah. Okay. If anyone wants to stick around, that's great. We will be recording this and we'll post the recording live. So if you have things to do, that's fine. I know we've all been on Zoom a lot these days. So one question, kind of a mix of questions, is, is there anything you really have changed in your product management practice that you're going to keep moving forward?
I think for me, I know we talked a little bit about this last week, Drew, but I am someone that relies on my verbal capacity and abilities very much. But now that we are a fully remote company, you're not always able to talk to someone video face to face, or get in a room with someone and talk it out. And it really forced me to hone in on my documentation skills and presentation skills from what I'm actually putting up on the screen, and not just what is coming out of my mouth. And know I need to continue to do that as we move forward.
What about you, Issa? Any changes in your product management practice? Or that's another good question, is there a skill that you had to lean on that that maybe wasn't as flexed before?
I think, being able to kind of do lateral thinking, instead of just like vertical, where I'm just like focusing on like the roadmap and like, trying to like get rid of like distractions and stuff. I think it's okay to have both, right? Because there was like, during the pandemic, there was like a lot of distraction, a lot of ambiguity, uncertainty. And like, when you're thinking vertical, you're trying to like get rid of that. You're trying to like swipe that away. But what I learned during this pandemic is it's actually okay to explore things that are distracting, to explore things that you might think is irrelevant, because that might be like an opportunity. So that's one thing that I will kind of keep on doing in the future. Yeah, I probably will start kind of doing more lateral thinking.
Interesting. Just a little piece of trivia. I'll just be the actually guy for a second. There's A integration is actually the name of what it's called, the ability to be in ambiguity. And it's like there's like a scale that they grade people on. And I know they've done a study on doctors and found that doctors they cannot deal with uncertainty, which is why they're so focused on evidence-based science, and they're so like the whole path of being a doctor is like guaranteed you're going to make a minimum amount of money, which is a lot. So I think that's really interesting. And my theory is that good product managers, are pretty good at being in ambiguity, because I mean, come on. Stuff happens in the software world. Chris, what about you? Any particular skills that you've had to tap into, or anything you've changed in your product management practices that you want to keep going?
I would say increased empathy for the team. I would hopefully consider myself empathetic to, we are all coming together, on a mission, but, we're motivated by the product, but we're also motivated by a paycheck. But we have families, we have home life. We're not just what people see during the 8 hours at work. So I like to think that I was empathetic about that before, but I really leaned into that now, really realizing what people are up against. Some people have, children at home. Some people have, elder care. Some people don't have. I'm lucky. I have a little, my breakfast area is my desk area, but not everybody has that, and they have to compete for space. So I became a lot more empathetic, and I want to carry that forward even when we're back in the office or quasi-remote.
Excellent. All right, I will do one more question, and then we can all go home. I guess we're already home. Huh? We can call it a wrap. I'm curious as to how much influence product had in the changes that happened. I know there's sort of a big push. Obviously, I'm doing another talk in a week and a half on product-led organizations, and the general idea is you have product as part of the decision making, and they're kind of they're the ones on the edge, and they should be in the center as well, right? Because they're interacting with the customers, but they're also should have part of the decision. How much were you guys included in this decision, and what's sort of the culture of product there at your organization?
I can go first. I mean, we have a very large product organization, and we're a very large company. So there is an interplay both from at the executive level. Like I said, we go through a OKR process from setting what the objectives are that the business is trying to hit. Then product tries to match that as to what we need to build or do or change to meet those objectives. And we're given some leeway, but everybody, we report up on our status, what our plans are, to make sure that everyone's marching in the same direction and that the company isn't wasting resources. So I think that we had a voice in the same way. Like, when we talked about social distance seating, what would it take to enable that? The product managers were, how close, how hard, what would it take? Can we do experiments? What would the ROI be on doing that? So I think that there was a lot of ideation from the exec level and the product, the product group, which also is research and designers and engineers. The ultimate decision when we had a very hard prioritization across the company, and each team was not going to be funded at the same level, it did come down to the executives making some hard calls, but with input.
Yep. Awesome. Isa, what was your experience? You guys aren't quite as big.
Right. Yeah, I mean, definitely I think the product team played a huge part, because we started going through product management processes, like doing your research or being empathetic. And, I feel like product managers, what we do day in, day out, we break down complex problems. And that's what we had to do. We, didn't know what the solution was, right? So we kind of had to go through that process, breaking down the problem, doing your research, figuring out the best opportunity, and then iterating fast and failing fast and learning from it. But yeah, huge part. The product team played a huge part.
That's great. Randy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we're a product-led, lucky to be a product-led organization. But I think what changed for us is that we were sort of had to be an integral part of changes that were happening in the organization in other departments. So when we had to overhaul our return policy and figure out how they were going to inspect returns virtually, we needed to figure out what that user flow was and then actually go and make all the changes and build out the functions that team needed to do. Same with how we attacked cancellations, which was just our customer service team reaching out to sellers. But as product people, we designed that process in figuring out who we should be targeting, how we're going to measure success. And that was actually really, I found a lot of value in that I very quickly learned corners of the business that prior to the crisis, I didn't have that much visibility to. And so, it was a crash course for me and for others on the team.
Awesome. Well, everyone, this has been really interesting for me. And I have a lot of respect for the work you guys have done. You guys have been able to, it sounds like really come out of this stronger. Every organization you've done some great things. So great job. And thanks for spending the time. And Ethan, thanks for letting me host the panel. I really enjoyed it. So have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you so much to Drew and all of our speakers. This is a good one. So thanks for the learnings.